We often hear people talk about breakups like they're all the same. They'll get over it. They didn't value anyway. They weren't right for you. But what no one tells you is what actually goes on in the mind of someone who had the right person and lost them, especially when that person is avoidant, because avoidants don't lose people the way others do. They realize it in slow motion. At first, it might seem like they're fine, calm, relieved. You might look at them and think, wow, did I even matter? You start questioning everything. But let me tell you something that may be hard to believe. That moment of silence, that cold exterior, it's not peace, it's protection. Avoidants are not unemotional. They're not incapable of love. They just learned, somewhere along the line, that closeness is dangerous, that need is weakness, that vulnerability equals pain. So when they lose the right person, someone who saw through their walls, who showed up consistently, who offered safety, it doesn't hit them like a tidal wave. It seeps in like a slow leak. Because avoidants are masters of delay. They suppress, they distract, they rationalize. They tell themselves, I needed space. It wasn't working anyway. They were too much. But what happens when the nights get quiet? What happens when no one texts them just to check in? When the person who once saw the best in them is no longer trying? That's when it hits. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's a whisper that grows into an H. They'll replay conversations, scroll through old messages. They might even look at your social media, not to judge, but just to feel close for a second. And for the first time, they realize something terrifying. They pushed away the one person who didn't want to fix them, who just wanted to love them. You were patient. You made space. You waited for them to come closer. And when they didn't, you had to choose you. And here's the tragedy: avoidance don't break down at the goodbye. They break down at the absence. When they feel your energy is no longer available. When they see you no longer orbit around them. When they know you're truly gone. Not just physically, but emotionally. They'll try to justify the loss in their mindy. She moved on too fast. He didn't really care. They just didn't understand me. But deep down, there's a quiet knowing they lost someone who got them. And those people don't come around often. So if you were the right person and you walked away because they couldn't meet you halfway, that was not weakness. That was strength. That was self-respect. And here's the hardest parting. They may never tell you they miss you. They may never chase you. But that doesn't mean they're unaffected. They're just fighting a battle you'll never see, with a version of you they can no longer reach. Not because you stopped loving them, but because you finally started loving yourself more. Avoidants feel the loss in delayed waves, not immediate breakdowns. At first, when a relationship ends, especially with someone they once cared deeply for, they may not show any signs of pain. To the outside world, they appear calm, composed, and even indifferent. This isn't because they don't feel anything. It's because their emotional wiring doesn't allow them to sit in vulnerability right away. Instead of reacting with tears or open expressions of sorrow, they lean into logic. They busy themselves. They tell themselves it was for the best. They tell their friends they needed space. They convince themselves the relationship was becoming too much, that the other person was overwhelming or too needy. They find reasons to validate the distance, because feeling the actual emotional weight of the loss is terrifying. Avoidants often learned early in life that emotions are risky. That needing someone means you can be hurt. That loving deeply leads to abandonment or control. So instead of leaning in, they lean away. Not because they want to lose love, but because closeness feels unsafe. So when they lose the right person, someone who offered them patience, security, and consistency, it doesn't register as a deep wound right away. It's more like a bruise they don't realize they have until someone touches it. Days or weeks may pass where they go about life, convincing themselves they've made the right decision. They go out, they scroll their phones, they return to the same patterns that once distracted them, but slowly things begin to shift. They notice the silence. They sense the absence. And instead of the loud, dramatic heart-touch that others might feel immediately, avoidants experience the loss like a quiet fog that rolls in over time. A song plays, and suddenly they remember a moment you shared. They go to a place you both used to visit, and your laughter echoes in their mind. They check their phone and realize it's been days without a message from you. The space you once held so generously in their life feels hauntingly empty, and the realization doesn't come with a bang. It comes with stillness. It comes late at night. It comes when they least expect it. They don't always connect the sadness to missing you. In fact, many avoidants aren't even aware that they're grieving. They might feel anxious, irritable, or down, but they won't always know why. That's because the loss is processed unconsciously before it surfaces consciously. They aren't trying to be distant or cold. They've just spent so much of their life building walls that even when someone breaks through, they don't know what to do with that closeness. And when that closeness disappears, it takes time for them to fully feel the consequences. The loss hits in layers. One moment it's tolerable, the next it stings. Then it fades again, it's inconsistent, it's fragmented. They might try to fill the void with distractions. Maybe they throw themselves into work or new hobbies. Maybe they start dating again, not to move on, but to avoid looking back. But none of it really sticks, because when you were the right person, you created a connection that couldn't be replaced by surface-level interactions. You touched something deeper, something they usually don't allow anyone to see, and losing that isn't something they can just shake off. They carry it quietly. They revisit old memories in private. They may even stalk your social media late at night, not to judge, but just to feel close to what they lost. It's important to understand that for avoidance, emotions move slowly through the body. They compartmentalize to survive. They avoid conflict to keep control. They detach to stay safe. So when they lose someone who brought emotional intimacy into their world, it takes time for the layers to peel back and expose what they really feel. And often, by the time they realize what they had, it's already gone. Not just physically, but emotionally. They sense that your energy has shifted, that you're no longer available the way you once were, that you stopped waiting. And that realization doesn't crash down all at once. It trickles in through small, seemingly insignificant moments. A familiar scent, a line from a movie, a quiet Sunday afternoon that used to be filled with your presence. True regret sets in when they feel your emotional absence, not your physical one. At first, they may not even recognize that they miss you. They tell themselves that the relationship had run its course, that they needed distance, that separation was healthy. They may look composed, distracted, or even relieved. But what they're really reacting to is your physical presence being gone, not your emotional energy being cut off. There's a difference between someone walking out of the room and someone no longer emotionally investing in you. The avoidant doesn't feel the full weight of the loss when you walk away. They feel it when you no longer orbit around them, when you stop caring, when you stop checking in, when your voice, once a familiar comfort, goes completely silent. Your physical absence can be explained away. They can say you moved on. They can say you're just taking time for yourself. But emotional absence is harder to ignore. It shows up in the spaces they didn't expect. When they think of something funny but don't have you to tell it to. When they want to share good news and instinctively reach for their phone before realizing you're no longer that person. It hits in those small, quiet moments when they realize the connection that once felt so easy and safe is now gone. Not because you disappeared, but because you stopped trying. You stopped waiting. You stopped giving your energy to someone who couldn't give it back. At first, they may believe that nothing has changed. They assume you're still emotionally available, still caring from afar. They might even expect you to return. But slowly, they begin to sense a shift. You don't reply the way you used to. Your tone feels different. Your warmth isn't there. And that's when the realization begins to settle in. The emotional tie they took for granted has been severed. It's not just about not seeing you. It's about not feeling you. That's when the regret begins to surface. Not in dramatic gestures or sudden apologies, but in quiet internal echoes. They might not express it, but it lives inside them. Emotional absence leaves a different kind of emptiness. They realize that no one else is reaching into the vulnerable parts of them the way you did. They might try to reconnect with others, but the depth isn't there. The understanding isn't there. The comfort of being truly known is gone. And they start to feel the contrast. The kind of connection you offer doesn't come often, and they know that now, even if they never acknowledged it while they had it. It's not that they didn't value it. It's that didn't know how to hold it. And now that it's gone, they feel its absence more clearly than anything else. They may try to revisit old memories, look through your photos, replay your voice messages, not because they want to re-enter your life, but because they're trying to recapture a feeling that reminded them of who could be when they were with you. Someone softer, someone seen, someone cared for without having to perform. That emotional presence you gave them allowed them to rest, even if they didn't know how to admit it. And now that it's missing, they feel unsettled in ways they can't quite explain. Avoidants are not immune to love. They just struggle to sit with it. And when it's gone, the regret that sets in isn't loud or dramatic. It's delayed and difficult to admit. They might try to find closure in their own mind. They may pretend they've moved on. They may surround themselves with distractions. But beneath all of that is a quiet longing for something they didn't know how to receive until it was no longer offered. They regret not just losing you, but not recognizing what you were giving them until your energy went cold. They may even test the waters, a vague message, "I hope you're doing well." But when they sense that your heart is no longer open to them, when they can feel that your presence is no longer an option, it hits in a way they didn't expect. They assumed you'd always be emotionally available, even if from a distance. But now that you've withdrawn your care, your attention, your emotional support, they're left with an absence that no one else can fill. This isn't about missing the routine or the texts or the companionship. It's about missing you, your soul, your presence. The safety they didn't know they were receiving, the depth they didn't know they were avoiding, and the love they didn't realize was real until it no longer reached them. Avoidants grieve silently, battling internal conflict they rarely express. They're not the ones you see crying in public or posting emotional quotes online. They don't tell friends they're devastated. They don't sit down and admit that they miss you. Instead, they carry their grief like a quiet weight tucked beneath the surface of their everyday life. On the outside, they may seem like they've moved on. They might appear unaffected, even indifferent. But the truth is, avoidants don't grieve the way others do. Their mourning process is hidden, often even from themselves. They bury their feelings beneath routines, distractions, and logic. They keep busy so they don't have to feel. Their grief is not linear. It doesn't follow a pattern. One moment they feel fine, the next something small, like a song or a scent, pulls them back into the memory of what was lost. But instead of letting that feeling wash over them, they shut it down. They suppress it. They intellectualize it. They might tell themselves it doesn't matter anymore, or that feelings are temporary. They don't want to fall apart. Falling apart would mean letting someone else's absence have power over them, and that feels unsafe, so they keep it together. On the surface, they're composed. Underneath, there's a war happening. A tug of war between what they truly feel and what they allow themselves to feel. This internal conflict isn't just about missing someone. It's about identity. Because when avoidants fall for someone, even if they never fully show it, that person becomes part of their inner world. You entered a place they don't often let people see. And when you're gone, it creates a fracture inside of them. A piece of them remembers who they were when they were with you. Maybe more open, maybe more vulnerable than they've ever been. And now, in your absence, they're forced to look at the parts of themselves they shut back down. They struggle with the question, do I feel this because I truly miss them? Or do I feel this because I allowed myself to be seen? They might try to erase your presence to avoid the pain. They might delete your photos, remove your name from conversations, avoid going to places you went together. But none of that erases the emotional imprint you left behind. The grief still exists, it's just hidden, tucked away in the corners of their mind that they only visit late at night, when everything is still and their guard is lowered. They may lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying conversations. They might wonder what they could have done differently, even if they'd never say it out loud. These are the moments where the truth creeps in. The sadness they keep pushing away finds a crack in their defenses and quietly seeps through. Avoidants rarely talk about their grief because they don't trust it. They've learned that emotions make them weak, that expressing pain opens the door to more pain. So they keep it to themselves. They'll say they're doing well. They'll talk about their job, their plans, their routines. But beneath the surface, they're reliving memories. They're comparing every new connection to what they had with you. They're searching for something that feels as safe, as accepting, as real as what they let go of. And often they come up empty. No one feels the same. No one looks at them the same. No one brings out the parts of them that you did. They might even start to feel a quiet kind of guilt. Not the loud, self-punishing kind, but a soft H that whispers, "You pushed away someone who cared." This guilt doesn't lead to grand gestures or apologies. It leads to distance. From others, from themselves. They might become colder, more withdrawn, more skeptical of future intimacy. Because if losing someone like you hurt this much, then letting someone in again feels even riskier. So they close the door tighter. They build the wall higher. They tell themselves it's better this way. And yet, the grief doesn't leave. It just changes form. It becomes a part of their story. A silent chapter they rarely share. One that shaped them more than they admit. You became a memory that lingers in their quietest moments, not because they didn't care, but because they cared in a way they didn't know how to hold on to. Their grief is not loud, but it is real. It's carried in silence, hidden behind routines, expressed only in glances at old photos or the way their mood shifts when someone mentions your name. Losing someone who offered unconditional love creates a lasting emotional imprint. It doesn't just vanish with time or get erased by distractions or replaced by someone new. It becomes part of them, quietly, permanently. When someone gives unconditional love, especially to someone who doesn't know how to receive it fully, it touches a place inside that's rarely accessed. Avoidants often struggle to accept closeness because they're used to self-protection, to guarding their emotions, to holding people at distance so they won't get hurt. But when they meet someone who loves them with demands without conditions, without constant pressure, it feels unfamiliar and overwhelming. And yet it also feels like home. They may not say it at the time. They may not even realize it consciously. But something shifts inside them when they experience that kind of love. It softens them. It shows them a version of connection that doesn't come with control or drama or fear. It shows them that they can be themselves, flawed, imperfect, emotionally hesitant, and still be cared for. That kind of love doesn't yeg, it just stays. And because it stays, it creates safety. It creates space for healing. It creates the possibility of something real. But when they lose it, especially because of their own emotional limitations, the impact lingers far longer than they expect. They might not talk about it. They might act like it was just another breakup. They might convince themselves it wasn't a big deal. But somewhere deep down, they know they had something rare. And they also know they didn't show up for it the way they should have. That awareness doesn't leave. It may sit quietly for a while, hidden beneath their normal routines, buried under the surface of their controlled demeanor. But it's there. It shows up in their inability to fully connect with others. It shows up in their comparisons. It shows up in their silence when people ask if they've ever been truly loved. They remember the way you looked at them with patience, the way you tried to understand even their most confusing behaviors, the way you stayed even when they pushed, the way you gave even when you didn't get much in return. That kind of love is not forgettable. It marks them in a way they don't know how to describe. And even if they move on with someone else, even if they start a new relationship or try to find comfort in something casual, there's always a part of them that remembers the emotional safety you gave. A part of them that wonders what might have happened if they had just let themselves fully receive it. Unconditional love leaves behind more than memories. It leaves behind a mirror that reflects not just who they were with you, but who they were too afraid to become. It shows them the difference between being liked and being accepted, between being desired and being truly known. And when that mirror is gone, they don't just miss you. They miss the version of themselves they were starting to discover, the version that could have grown, healed, evolved if they had only stayed open long enough. They may never say these things. They may never reach out to tell you what you meant. They may never apologize for not meeting you where you stood. But that doesn't mean the love didn't reach them. It did. It broke through walls they thought were unbreakable. It reminded them that deep down they want to be loved just as much as anyone else. They just don't always know how to hold it. And when they lose it, they don't just lose a relationship. They lose a chance to feel truly safe in someone's presence. This kind of loss shapes the way they approach love in the future. It makes them cautious, but also aware. They might look back and realize that what they had was the closest they've ever come to emotional intimacy. And while they may not admit it out loud, the regret stays. It shows up in quiet moments, in songs, in memories, in the way they find themselves drawn to people who remind them of you, yet never quite match what you gave. Because love that asks for nothing but presence is powerful. And when it's gone, it doesn't just disappear. It echoes. Walking away from an avoidant who can't meet you is a sign of self-respect, not failure. It's one of the hardest choices someone can make. To love deeply, give consistently, hold space for another person's wounds, and still choose to let go. Especially when you've seen glimpses of who they could be. When you've felt moments of closeness that told you there was something real, something worth fighting for. But love cannot survive on potential alone. It cannot thrive in a one-sided effort where one person keeps showing up and the other keeps pulling away. You can't continue pouring from a place that's constantly being emptied. You can't continue shrinking yourself just to fit into someone's limited capacity for connection. When you choose to walk away from someone avoidant, you're not giving up on them. You're choosing to stop abandoning yourself. You're choosing to stop waiting for someone to meet you halfway when they won't even take the first step. You're acknowledging that love without reciprocity becomes self-sacrifice. You're admitting that no matter how much empathy you have for their wounds, it cannot come at the expense of your own emotional safety. And that's a hard truth, because those who love avoidance often feel deeply responsible for them. They see the fear behind the distance, the tenderness behind the detachment. But understanding someone's pain does not mean you're responsible for healing it. Avoidants often struggle to let people in because they've learned that vulnerability is dangerous. They fear being hurt, rejected, overwhelmed. So they create distance even when they care. They hold back even when they want closeness. And when you stay, you find yourself constantly reaching, constantly proving, constantly softening your own needs in order to keep the peace. Over time, you lose pieces of yourself. You begin to question whether you're too much, too emotional, too needy. You start to doubt your worth, not because you're lacking, but because their inability to connect makes you feel invisible. And still, you try harder. You think if you just love them better, they'll finally open up. But love shouldn't feel like a test you keep failing. Love shouldn't feel like chasing someone who's always walking away. And when you finally decide to stop running after them, it's not weakness, clarity. It's the moment you realize that your love deserves space to land. It deserves to be seen, valued, and held. You deserve to be met with the same care and consistency that you offer so freely. You deserve to feel safe, not confused. You deserve someone who doesn't flinch at your feelings, who doesn't disappear when things get close, who doesn't punish you for wanting connection. Walking away from someone you love is never easy, especially when you've invested time, energy, hope, especially when you believed in their potential. But the version of them you believed in cannot replace the reality of what they give you. Potential can't hold you at night. Potential can't show up in hard conversations. Potential can't make you feel secure, and you are allowed to let go of someone who can't give you what you need, even if they're struggling, even if they're not a bad person, even if you know they love you in their own way, because loving you in their own way isn't always enough if that way hurts. There is nothing selfish about choosing peace over chaos. Nothing wrong with protecting your heart from someone who keeps closing theirs. Nothing weak about stepping away from love that feels uncertain, conditional, or one-sided. In fact, it takes tremendous courage. It takes strength to acknowledge that someone you care for may never be able to meet you where you are. It takes maturity to walk away without anger, without blame, simply because your soul needs something more, something whole, something mutual. You're not asking for perfection. You're asking to not be left alone in the relationship. You're asking to be loved out loud, not in silence, to be held emotionally or just tolerated from a distance. And when you walk away, you reclaim something sacred. Your dignity. You remind yourself that love is not something you should have to beg for. That emotional availability is not a luxury. It's a basic need. You reaffirm to yourself that your feelings are not a burden, that your needs are not unreasonable, that your presence is not something someone should fear. And though it hurts to leave, especially when part of you still wants to stay, your choice to walk away becomes the moment you say yes to yourself again. Yes to healing. Yes to growth. Yes to being loved the way you love.